Greetings, Guardians. My name is Byfear. So, we've had a lot of back and forth lately about the idea of a red subclass. All of this is thanks to that oh-so-important story element of Renegades, Nightfall Station, and Eclipse Energy. Its ability to target only Guardians within the campaign is something remarkable as far as a weapon goes, and its obvious power has led a lot of people to ask whether this new power is something we might one day use ourselves. And then of course we get to the really juicy stuff. It's red. Which makes all the difference because we could see a red subclass. I mean, there was the leak however many years ago at this point that ended up just being completely false, and I don't know. This is just one of those community rumors like the 15th Wish. Bungie will make it real one day, I'm sure, but like, there is so much copium out there about this. However, today I want to discuss some stuff which I don't necessarily think is copium, but instead actually some pretty cool stuff. I, for one, am not a believer in the red subclass at this moment as it's been posed across the community generally, but belief isn't fact. And for what it's worth, I think new subclasses are generally pretty cool no matter where they come from. I care a lot less about where they come from and a lot more about their impact on the story and narrative of the game. And with that in mind, if you've been looking at this topic, I'm sure you've absolutely seen it come across your feeds, but if you haven't, check out this one video from another creator called Danke. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. I don't know if it's German or if it's not, but if it isn't German, you have one permission slip to call me Biff. His video articulates some really interesting ideas about the potential of an Eclipse energy-based subclass. For what it's worth, and I say this not to undermine but simply for clarity, his terminology, as we'll go into, of anti-causal or anti-paracausal, if you break it down to its true meaning, isn't technically correct. But I don't want that to take away from anything because I completely understand what he's trying to say. It certainly does not devalue the overall thrust of what's being presented by him in that video, so this is much more for clarification and completeness than anything else. Please go watch it if you haven't. I'm going to remind you and leave the link down below in the description. More lore stuff from anyone in the community is always welcome, and frankly, no idea is a bad idea until empirical evidence proves it wrong. And whilst there is some interesting questions and unknowns, I'm not going to rule anything out right now. This is a complete unknown. Today, though, I wanted to discuss what I think the actual future subclass is, as well as going over the implications of Eclipse energy. Because yes, if there is a red subclass that's meant to be out there, or if there is meant to be a future subclass of some kind, I don't think it is going to be Eclipse, but I do think there is going to be something. It's no surprise to anyone, it's something we've seen before. But today we'll start with Eclipse energy and break down what we know about it, before we move on to what I think is actually missing, which is nightmare energy, or alternatively, dream energy, if you want to call it that. But first, let's talk about Eclipse. We learn relatively little about it during the campaign aside from two things. The first of which is its capability to destroy anything with the light or darkness. The second of which is that, essentially, it's dark matter energy of some kind. So, with the whole thing about it being able to destroy the light or darkness, I want to put a few big asterisks above what's being said there and break things down a little bit. Because the jury's still out on the exact effects of this. Don't get me wrong, we saw it vaporize a bunch of Guardians in Thassa's outpost, but we still don't know the specifics to a degree that is actually useful. For one, the jury is still out on whether this impacts the light and dark, or whether it also impacts every paracausal force in Destiny. Yes, even though Dredgen Bale says it impacts paracausal beings generally. As a reminder, and so we can get our terminology straight, something can either be causal, meaning it obeys the laws of the universe and can be mathematically calculated and predicted, or it can be acausal or paracausal, meaning that it can break the laws of the universe and thus is impossible or near impossible to completely predict in most circumstances. Again, I say almost impossible because there are, for one, levels of paracausal power. A freshly risen Blueberry isn't going to be able to do as much as, say, Saint 14 and Ikora, and might be a little bit easier to predict. Secondly, one also has to consider that paracausality, in some extreme circumstances, can still be predicted. It's just incredibly frickin' hard. Case in point, take a look at Panoptes. The Vex basically constructed it with a single thing in mind, and that thing was finding the end state of the universe where they won out over light and dark. So yeah, paracausality doesn't technically always mean that something is completely unpredictable, but it sure as hell means that it can break the laws of the universe. So why do we not know whether eclipse energy is effective against all paracausal forces? And yes, I am again taking into account the time when Bale claims the opposite. The reason is simple. There are more paracausal forces in the universe than simply the light and the dark. It's used as a catch-all term for them because the light and darkness do make up these powers most commonly, but they're not the only paracausal forces within the universe. For example, the power of Queen Mara Sov is apparently a fusion of light and darkness, and it is also capable of breaking the laws of the universe. So how affected is she? She is technically paracausal. The power of wish magic from Ahamkara equally is very much capable of breaking the laws of the universe. That too counts as paracausality. It might seem pedantic, but the distinction is important for understanding eclipse energy to a greater degree. I mean, if an Ahamkara can survive this beam weapon, I think that has pretty important implications for the future, especially given the Nine's interest in the Ahamkara way back when. I also want to point out an inconsistency here within the story of Renegades, which kind of bugs me. We all know Zavala is capable of using stasis, but Bale says that he doesn't have a ghost, so he wouldn't be killed. And yet, Blue also stated earlier in the campaign that we would not be able to survive it if we were using darkness, because the Nightfall Station's eclipse energy targets paracausality generally. So, which is it? Do pure darkness users survive? Do people who have ghosts die, or is it just Guardians generally if they're using some kind of paracausal force? I'm not sure what it is, and at this point a little clarification would definitely be welcome. As for Nightfall Station itself and what it actually does with eclipse energy, it seems that the weapon can be explained at least a little bit better. At a certain point in the Renegades campaign, we decode the schematics for Nightfall Station with the help of a Piker's Shank. Arnor Mahal is there to interpret the data for us, and the schematics make the weapon out to be a, quote, giant dark matter projector. So yeah, eclipse energy is dark matter based. Surprising perhaps nobody, given that it's a source of power gifted from the outer orbits to Bale. So yeah, it comes from the dimension of the Nine, the fourth dimension. Also, to clarify a little bit of terminology used in Danker's video, again, here's another potential Chicken McFly slip for calling me Biff if you want, that's totally reasonable. You're not looking at what is paracausal and anticausal or anti-paracausal forces here. That's essentially saying the same thing as paracausal and causal. The word I think which fits better that you might want to use in the future isn't necessarily regarding the causal universe at all, and it's disappointing to a certain extent because it's just more broadly defined as fourth dimensional. And for the record, I do hate that because I do think that Danker's explanation is more comprehensible. That makes 3, okay, sure, I'll just buy you a beer at this point. I completely understand the use of the language because it does communicate something important about eclipse energy. It's just the weird side effects of words generally being stupid. He's right about the general idea of it being a means by which the Nine can essentially pull the plug on anything that's using light or darkness. Saying it's anathema is basically saying that it is strongly opposed to those forces. Again, I can't fault the meaning behind the actual words being used here in the video either. It's just that weird quirk of English having double negatives and anti-paracausal also technically just rolling back into something being causal. Sadly, this is where most of the information on eclipse energy goes cold and runs out. Except for one last really troubling matter in my mind at very least, which is the confirmation of something incredibly important thanks to a disturbing instance. In the aftermath of the Tharsis outpost attack, we can go up to a Guardian whose body we find, and the text states the following. Dredgen Bale's orbital weapon has shorn this Guardian's paracausal soul apart. You sense no light within this body. So first of all, we can confirm a lot more implicitly here that we do indeed have souls, and they're special reality-breaking paracausal souls. We've known that the Hive have had something akin to a soul in the universe ever since the Taken King, when Crota's soul was being ushered on. It was confirmed again thanks to the machinations of a few Hive within the Inquisition of the Damned lorebook. And in the final shape, we did get some notions of the idea of an afterlife being revealed, but this time it is pretty explicitly saying that we have souls and that they got cut away and broken apart by Nightfall Station and its eclipse energy. So yeah, we have souls and we now know that they can be eaten by the Nine. Huh, that's not good. At this point, it doesn't really matter if you believe that there'll be a subclass with Eclipse Energy or not. Eclipse Energy is here to stay, most likely, and we need to be prepared to fight against it, if not, hopefully, with it someday. The fact that it can shear apart paracausal souls is troubling enough, and that's before we even start asking if it catches the solid 90% of paracausal beings in the system, or whether it catches everything, from Guardians to Mara Sov to Wish Dragons to some random Ascendant hive. On that note, I'll say it again, check out Dunker's video on the subject for more speculation and an interesting look on this topic. And yes, that makes 4 now. At this point, I'm so sorry if I keep getting the name wrong. My apologies. Entschuldigung even. Anyway, enough of the potential German here. As I said at the start, I don't think that we're going to get another subclass based on Eclipse Energy. I'm a proponent of the idea that we'll get a third Darkness subclass to balance out 3 Light and 3 Dark all these years later. Regardless of what the truth ends up being, I'll be really happy to see what it is, and again, I'm not sure I care so much what the subclass is, as opposed to whether it has really cool lore implications. But I think that the future subclass is actually something we've already seen up until this point, namely, Nightmare Energy. But I should stress again that the Nightmare Energy is perhaps a misnomer here. You see, Nightmare Energy has a lot of evil implications thanks to its association with characters like Nezarec. Nezarec in himself using Nightmare Energy is mentioned a bit in the final shape. Take a listen again to the criminally underrated Micah 10 as she explains some of it alongside our ghost.
Nightmares. I thought after we killed Nezarec that they'd go away. But they haven't. The pyramid must be partially responsible for them too.
Harris wrote extensive documentation on nightmares after her last encounter with them. She and I believe that they are a yet untapped power of the darkness. One that Nezarec co-opted for himself and wove into the fabric of his pyramid.
Here I think it's really clear because it all just sort of gets spelled out really. There are 3 known light energies and we can add in a 3rd known darkness energy here as well. This certainly fits neatly in that respect, but again, I don't think Nightmare Energy is the right thing to call this. I think the correct thing to call this is something closer to Dream or potential Darkness Energy. Here's why. When you look at something like Stasis, which is a pure form of darkness, it's often given a series of evil associations, but it's actually a neutral force that is represented by certain elements of the immaterial world. Concepts like control and will are closely aligned with Stasis. This is how all forces of darkness work. They're aligned with the unseen world of the psychological. Take a look instead at Strand, and you'll see that it's a power that comes from connectivity, and the power of the threads of fate that invisibly bind us all together. Strand is a manifestation of that connection that Guardians can empower, sever, unravel, or weave according to their plans and desires. So then, what is Nightmare Energy in this more neutral respect? Breaking it all down, we have to ask what a nightmare is. Not the nightmares in game, but just the idea of a nightmare. Something imagined, but which isn't real, and yet also something terrible. Equally, the good version of a nightmare is a good dream. Dreams are equally manifestations of something that might be possible, but they're often pleasant or even wonderful with the outcomes of their possibilities. The thing that unites them is the idea of potential, the possibility aspect of it all. So I think that's what's really tying this all together. If Stasis is all about will and control, if Strand is all about connectivity, I think this new Darkness subclass is all about potential. But I think it's expressed as nightmares or dreams on a spectrum of fear and desire. To understand this further, look at the memories that manifested from our character cohort during the season of The Haunted. They all started off as nightmares, but they then transformed into memories when all our characters embraced a fair degree of closure over what happened in their past. Not being ruled by fear and doubt and regret allowed each character to recontextualize their nightmares into memories, which all showed the remnants of someone who used to be important to them. However, I think even the word memory is a misnomer here because they're not reciting things that happened. They have those old memories, certainly, but I think it's just a memory in terms of its appearance. In all other respects, these manifestations were still specters of the present. they didn't just peel away at the insecurities and fears of the character. Instead, they affirmed their strengths and progress on the path forward. Again, none of these characters would remember any of the things they're saying happening. Instead, this is still about a potential, and I emphasize that word, potential past version of themselves, saying what they would have said in a complimentary manner, or a productive or constructive one under these same circumstances. Again, it's all potential. Nightmares are all about taking a moment and breaking you down for it. Dreams, on the other hand, are all about taking that moment and healing it, or making it simply less painful, or building strength from it. Potential is the word. Potential, I think, is the key. The actual powers associated with this, therefore, could be akin to anything one could imagine. But I personally think if you look at D&D and the way that psychic damage and illusions are presented, that gives us an interesting parallel that we could draw in Destiny. On the support side of things, we could summon mirror images of ourselves that increase the degree to which we're protected. Imagine amplified, but you have illusory duplicates alongside you. We could potentially summon a shadowy version of ourselves that's also shooting its weapon, thus increasing our damage. We could manifest phantasms of power to hunt our foes down or plague them with doubt and slow their advance. The possibilities here, as always, are only limited by one's imagination. And as for supers, I don't know if this is what's going to happen, but if any of us did happen to pick up anything akin to Nezarek's Scythe, the Night Terror, for a super, I don't think I'll see anyone complaining. Either way, that's my quick summary of Eclipse Energy, and my look at what I think that red subclass might one day be. Do I know anything in particular about this? No, and I can stand by what I think Paul Tassi has also said. If there was going to be a red subclass, Bungie would have previewed it, and we as creators and people who are there on the press side of things would have been able to talk about it at the Renegades reveal. So yeah, no. There is no red subclass at current. I hate to break it to everybody. Maybe one day. I mean, after all, they keep on hinting at these ideas, but I'll be completely honest with you. I don't know anything, so don't look at me on that front. Again, 5th time's the charm here. Check out Danka. I hope it's not Dan KE or whatever. That'll be real embarrassing. Either way, check out his video. It's got a very interesting breakdown of his ideas and theories about paracausality and the 4th dimensional powers of the Nine that can just turn it off. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like and leave your own thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, remember to hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership as always has been quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Per audacia ad astra. I'll see you, Starside.